Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting for Monday, December 16th, 2024. Please rise for the playing of the national anthem and a moment of reflection.
Oh, Canada.
Please be seated. At this time, I will look to Councillor McPherson to read the land acknowledgement.
The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Attawandaron, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many Indigenous peoples made up of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the Dish, the territories on which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability.
Thank you, Councillor. Good evening, everyone. Tonight will be a different mayor's report. It is with profound sadness and a heavy heart that we mourn the loss of Councillor Garcia, who represented the people of Port Dalhousie so passionately and selflessly from 2014 until his passing. Carlos's contributions to this community were immeasurable and ran much deeper than simply his time on city and regional council. His presence will be deeply missed. Carlos was not just a public servant. He was a leader who dedicated his life to making St. Catharines a better place for everyone. His work on council and within the community extended across numerous committees and initiatives, shaping our city in ways that will continue to benefit us for years to come. He was an advocate for heritage preservation, environmental stewardship, and responsible urban planning. His love for Port Dalhousie was evident in everything he did. He worked tirelessly to ensure that Port Dalhousie remained a vibrant, thriving community, preserving its unique character while pushing for a brighter future for its residents. As chair of the Budget Standing Committee, Carlos played a pivotal role in shaping the city's financial strategies. He worked alongside my office to create a budget process that was built on transparency, accountability, and public consultation. His leadership in this area was exceptional and has left a lasting impact on St. Catharines' financial health. Carlos's contributions to the arts and culture in our community were also significant. He was a passionate advocate for the Niagara Jazz Festival and a dedicated board member of the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. His work to support and promote the arts in St. Catharines, including his leadership on the Performing Arts Centre's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force, will continue to inspire us all. Although Carlos and I didn't always see eye to eye on every issue, we always found common ground, working together for the betterment of our community. I remember when I was first elected mayor and needed a trusted councillor to chair the Budget Committee. Without hesitation, Deputy Mayor Bill Phillips recommended Carlos. When I asked him if he would consider it, his response was thoughtful. He was already involved in so many other areas, he said, and would have to scale something back if he were to do the job properly. From that point forward, he was the only person I could imagine in that role. He understood what the job meant, and he was only willing to do it if he could do it properly. He was always prepared, asked the tough questions, and never shied away from his responsibilities. His dedication and professionalism were second to none. Carlos's legacy will live on in the many projects he championed, the people he helped, and the example he set as a committed public servant. His passion for his community, his commitment to his work, and his love for Port Dalhousie will not be forgotten. On behalf of the City of St. Catharines and our council, I offer our heartfelt condolences to Carlos's family. Our thoughts and prayers are with them during this incredibly difficult time. Carlos will be sorely missed, but his legacy of service and dedication will continue to inspire us all. And I'd ask at this time if we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, I will look to the clerk for the adoption of the agenda.
The following amendments have been made to the agenda. Councillor Phillips has requested to pull additional correspondence, sub-item 1, correspondence from the Foster Festival regarding requests for letter of support for endorsement. And the following items of additional correspondence have been placed in Council Sugar Sync folder and are generally available to the public by contacting the clerk's office. Number 1, correspondence from the Foster Festival regarding requests for letter of support. Confidential memorandum from the Director of Community and Recreation and Culture Services regarding item 9.3, proposal from Dead Red Sports and Entertainment Group Limited, and memorandum from Manager of Bylaw Enforcement and Licensing regarding short-term rental enforcement fund grant opportunity.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Lindell, seconder, Councillor Phillips. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Adoption of the minutes. The council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on November 18th, 2024, and the council adopt the minutes of the regular council budget meeting held on November 21st, 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dodge, Councillor Stevens. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, we will move to item 5, which is the motion to move consent reports. And can I have a mover that council approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items brought forward for discussion? Councillor Phillips, Councillor Townsend. And I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Today's consent agenda, item 6.1, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, proposed update to procedure bylaw. And item 6.2, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, council correspondence, save and accept, sub-item number 6. Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller. Absent. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right. On to the declaration to all presenters. Council chambers in all municipalities in our country represent the seat of local democracy. The many acts that govern us understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our bylaws, and to seek opinions into very complex issues, ensuring safe spaces for all in our public discourse. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but that we understand we do this in a way that never undermines any person's ability or their dignity in our chambers. We respect the right for everyone to have an opinion and remind the audience views of the public do not always reflect those of the Corporation of the City of St. Catharines. There are no public meetings this evening. There are no presentations, so we move into item 9.1, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Community Initiatives and Partnerships, the Sports Field Strategy. Prior to the discussion on the report, I will call upon Anand Desai and Dylan Whitty, Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, to present regarding the Sports Field Strategy. Sir, the lectern is yours. There are buttons that allow you to move it up and down, too. On the right-hand side.
Oh. Thank you, Councillor Dodge.
It's the fanciest part of our entire chamber. It's my favorite part, too.
Yes. The old wood, you wouldn't think the tech exists in here. It's lovely. Thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Anand Desai. Dylan, I gave him the ability to stay out of the car. I woke up with the sniffles today, so it's just myself today. From Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, we are pleased to present the sports field strategy to you, members of council. So the sports field strategy, just like the arena strategy, the aquatic strategy, these are inputs into the city's recreation facility and programming master plan. That initiative has recently begun, but it provides an opportunity to look in detail at a specific form of infrastructure, in this case, sports fields, and provides a guide for the next 10 years. Over the last few months, we have engaged the community, done a lot of research, worked with city staff to come up with an understanding of how your sports fields are being used, where they're located, how they serve the community. And in doing so, as I mentioned, we engaged not only the general public, but sport field users across St. Catharines, did a tour of all the relevant sports fields, and came up with some strategies which were tested in a draft stage so that we could come back to council today with a final report, knowing that it's been heard by the community, by the Recreation Master Plan Advisory Committee. They've had input along the way, and today is the final strategy. So the reason that I think it's important to look at sports fields, it may seem very specific, but these are facilities that occupy a fairly sizable land base in your city. Your city structure, your city population is changing since over the past really 10 years or so. Growth in St. Catharines has accelerated. We're seeing not only an increase in number of people, but who those people make up, the demographics, so persons of different age groups, cultural backgrounds, incomes, and so forth. And so having opportunities through sport fields provides an ability for your city to be active, to be healthy, to be socially connected, much like other types of forms of recreation. And I think one thing that is different compared to when I started planning and working with this city many years ago, the type of growth that is occurring in your city. It isn't necessarily the greenfield, single detached home kind of development. We're seeing a greater degree of infill and intensification, land developments in areas that are perhaps already built up. And how does one find readily developable large tracts of land? These are important considerations. So with respect to the city's fields, it establishes something called a field classification system, which helps to dictate everything from how fields are designed, the levels of services that are applied from a maintenance perspective and operations perspective. It influences the rates that your user groups pay on different types of fields. And so type A fields are the highest quality fields. They would either have synthetic fields, so as in the case of Kiwanis, they would have lighting, supportive amenities in ball diamonds, maybe dugouts, fencing, those kinds of things. They also benefit from the greatest degree of maintenance. So those are perhaps the facilities that you direct the highest and greatest amounts of capital investment as well as operational attention to. User groups don't always need the best of the best when they're running things like practices or use by the youngest age divisions. So again, the city directs different kinds of design amenities and operating considerations to other types of fields. This is significant because really, in the context of our study, the classification really dictates the quality and ultimately the investment. With the growth that is occurring in your city, we are seeing certain needs for additional sports fields, but largely in the 2029 to 2036 period, so in the next 5 to 10 years, in terms of additional fields per se on the rectangular side. Our strategy is one, as you'll see in the slides that follow, of kind of incremental improvements. Again, we've looked at the utilization rates of your fields, and by and large, They have rebounded since COVID, but perhaps not to the levels seen just before the pandemic started. Even when we look to 10, 15 years ago in terms of registrations, we do believe there is a degree of capacity in your rectangular field system. But one thing that user groups told us, they also wanted to emphasize not necessarily quantity of fields, but quality and the type of fields. So as you will see, again, in the slides that follow, we are identifying 6 unlit equivalent fields. I know unlit equivalent sounds funny, but what we want to do is recognize the investment that you as a council, as a city, have made in those higher quality fields, the lit fields. Those lit fields allow more use to occur on them than an unlit comparable, because in the late spring, early fall, when it gets dark a little later, but it's still 8 o'clock and those fields are usable, if there aren't lights, it's difficult to catch a fly ball, for example. So we want to recognize and standardize how we classify your investments in your fields. And so we're not necessarily saying build 6 new rectangular fields. It could be a mix of unlit and lit fields that ultimately get you to that 6. In this case, we are recommending a lit field in the Ontario Street corridor, and as well as 2 new Type A fields, so those higher quality fields, at a future park to determined. We are also looking at adding the equivalent of 1.5 new fields by improving existing fields. So those lower quality fields, if we can bring them up with lighting, appropriate drainage, that will allow you to increase your playable capacity without having to acquire land. We've also talked about the potential. So at West Park, we have the field that's used by the Olympic Club for track and field. Are there opportunities to work with them and negotiate some greater use of that infield? Again, with the mindset that it's very difficult. You have, as you can see on the screen, that green area is the green belt. You also have the escarpment. So we are getting pretty close, as you know, to your built boundaries. Also working with the school boards, the public board in particular has invested in a number of artificial turf fields, and so they've been able to do that on their own. The model in other parts of the province we're seeing, though, is more collaboration between school boards and the municipalities, especially as the land base becomes a little bit more scarce for those large tracts of land. There can be cost-sharing opportunities, and so engaging those school boards to understand their short-term and long-term plans. Pop-up or box soccer is perhaps more of a longer-term endeavor, but we're seeing not a lot yet, but trying to be a bit proactive in that you can have these small courts almost that have an artificial turf in areas of intensification, smaller uses, and the artificial turf allows those fields to withstand that level of density and intensity. One thing that we did hear from the user groups is that they have a lot of growth in their youngest age divisions. And so a big full-size field isn't necessarily something that they can benefit from at the moment. They need smaller fields. And so what we have suggested is that we look at your large fields and perhaps temporarily reorient some of them, those lower quality fields, provide some supporting amenities, maybe like a sea can or some sort of storage where they can store those tiny little nets. Instead of having you go and invest in permanent net installations only to have them, you rip them out when those 8-year-olds turn into 16-year-olds. If we can, again, build that flexibility in, we think there's a benefit there. I will talk about the Pick-Leeson. There is a rectangular field at Pick-Leeson. We are talking about relocating that field, and I'll get that, I'll explain that in a moment. Uh-oh. Looks like, there we go. Okay, so the item marked as number 6 here, one thing that we heard from ball diamond users, again, a conversation about quality, not necessarily quantity. Quality in the sense that they're very pleased with the number of diamonds that are suitable for youth in your community. The larger diamonds for adults, those more higher level hardball players that can really swing for the fences, let's say. They're looking for, some diamonds that can accommodate that kind of use. We are proposing to relocate the Alex Mackenzie ball diamond, which is getting in an advanced life cycle state. We have heard from groups, now they enjoy using it, but they say we can only use it up to a certain age. And otherwise, we're spraying foul balls onto the houses that are nearby. So they're saying there's some limitations with Alex McKenzie. They're saying we want more multi-diamond complexes, kind of like McCaffrey. So we're proposing to relocate the Alex McKenzie diamond to the Pick Leeson John Dempsey Park. That would create 4 diamonds at that location. We are also proposing, you are, from a recreational perspective, the city where everybody can play. That is the vision statement in your master plan. Inclusive ball diamonds, so challenger diamonds. We'll have a synthetic surface, so folks, largely kids, that may be using mobility aids like wheelchairs or other forms of mobility aids are able to play through an inclusive diamond. We are talking about improvements to Meriton Community Park, so redevelopment of diamond number 3. It's currently, again, a type B type of diamond, and we are talking about improving drainage and field lighting at that location, as well as potentially reorienting ball diamond number 4, again, reinforcing that as a kind of a multi-diamond destination. And talking about drainage improvements to some of your diamonds we heard from the groups and rectangular fields prone to flooding. So starting with George Taylor Field, starting with targeting a minimum of 1 field per year. That way you can stagger out that cost of reinvestment in those fields. Finally, on the side of cricket, we are talking about positioning the city for the future. Cultural diversification is occurring in your city. But at the moment, at least based on the most recent census data, immigration from those cricket-playing nations account for about 5% of your resident base. Typically, a city around 100,000 would start to think about cricket grounds. But what we're suggesting, through this process, we didn't really hear a lot from the public or any cricket-playing groups for the need. That being said, we know that your staff have told us that there is some anecdotal observations. So perhaps through the master plan, that might come out a little bit more fulsomely. But we know it's coming, and so we're talking about the potential to land bank, acquire a parcel of land. A cricket pitch is essentially the size of 2 full soccer fields, so it's a fairly sizable land base. If we can acquire a parcel of land, to position for that future, that's great. If for some reason the demand doesn't materialize, you have the ability to kind of convert it to other forms of parkland or other sports fields. We are, however, and seeing other municipalities to help test the demand for cricket, is install these batting cages, more casual or recreational play. So you'd be enclosed, people can play in a neighborhood park setting. We're talking about selecting 2 parks on either side of the QE. And again, that will potentially help to test demand and support cricket play. The costs of our strategy do amount to about $8 million over the next 10 years. That is all associated with new capital. Again, the city, and staff will be presenting to council on an ongoing basis, how this is achievable also in the context of your existing asset management. As I mentioned, Alex McKenzie Park, for example, the diamond there, could require, some considerable work. And so one asks themselves, is it better to reinvest in certain diamonds or fields? Is it, more advantageous to, build new or readapt other locations? So with that, as I mentioned, so staff will work, and keep council informed with respect to the capital plans and budgets, so the operating side of things as well. We'll be considering this, the recommendations through this strategy with the other asset management works and integrate the analysis within this recreation facilities master plan. So with that, I want to thank council and for hearing the findings to date, and I would be pleased to take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions for the presenter? Councillor Williamson, followed by Councillor Phillips, and then Councillor Ratzlaff.
Sorry to make these questions, sir. Some of them are kind of statements. There's a number of private organizations we're very fortunate to have, like the Grantham Optimist Club and Club Roma, providing sports fields and leagues like programming. And so did you consider those in terms of your consideration And you did mention the school boards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when we look at the north, for example, I think the Grantham Optimists fill a pretty nice gap with their 4 diamonds there, for example. So absolutely. I think the challenge, though, not challenge, I think one has to be mindful that with school boards, for example, maintenance standards may differ from yours as a city. So, their focus on their budgets is largely education. But that being said, I think the city, from past experience, works well with its school boards. And I think there's an opportunity, through this to kind of advance that sports field planning.
Right, yeah, and the Grantham Optimist is, they've seen a significant increase in terms of T-ball, like younger players. So in terms of demographics, I would think that'll lead down the road. Like, there's a suggestion that maybe or fastball and softball and hardball might be on the decline, but the numbers there, for example, sort of belie that truth. I don't know if you could speak to those statistics.
I feel like the statistics are tied to the success of the Jays. I mean, the Jays are good, ball's great. Yeah. But I think, no, like there was a period of time, I think in the early 2000s, maybe even late 90s, where we did see kind of, ball stagnating, at least hardball, for example. We've seen that pick up really since kind of 2014, in terms of more of a growth scenario. So I think it's important to be mindful of that trend. And just as kind of you alluded to on the softball side as well, and T-ball, I mean, T-ball obviously is the little kids, but softball, I mean, recreational adult leagues seem to be a popular kind of outlet for a lot of folks kind of, in their
right.
early
and
adulthood.
The progression can be moving from T-ball to softball to more competitive hardball, that kind of thing. Okay, Alexander Mackenzie Ballpark, which in my day was called City Sports Park, and saw a really high level of competitive play and some locally famous athletes there that some of them could hit the ball out of the parks. I don't know how many youth players can actually hit it over the fence on the, would be Pleasant Avenue side, I guess. The recommendation is to kind of downgrade that to type B field. How expensive would it be just since it's already established at a type A? Would it cost that much more just to kind of maintain it at a little higher level? Maybe not the full-fledged type A, but somewhere close to where it is since it's already established at that level?
Yeah, Councilor Williamson, I think, there's a couple of things with Alex Mackenzie that, again, we want to be mindful of, or at least we were mindful of when we were doing the study, in that the groups really were emphasizing, a preference of single diamond parks. Sorry, they were preferencing the multi-diamond parks more so than the single diamond parks. Mm-hmm. I think that was a really big thing. And from you, for a staffing perspective and operation standpoint, those multi-diamond complexes are much more operationally efficient. For the user groups, they're telling us, they can run tournaments. They can have, efficiencies in their own costs by being at a multi-diamond complex. I think with Alex Mackenzie, they were telling us just they said the kids are bigger. There's use of, different kinds of bats now. So the ball's traveling further. And so that combined with the fact that, where the old GM plant is, like that whole Ontario Street corridor, we know is an area that is anticipated and being planned for change and growth. We know that the province has amended the Planning Act so that you as a municipality or municipalities are, entitled to about half the parkland through development as, maybe even 5 years ago. So we feel that there's going to be a lot of pressure in the Ontario Street corridor for parkland, and, whether it continues to be a diamond of some sort of quality or whether it continues to be, another use, that might support the needs in and around the Ontario Street corridor. I think that's something that perhaps, we want to keep the option open for the city.
Thank you. And then I'm pleased to see in the report, at least my read of it, that there's really no suggestion that we need more artificial turf fields. And I know that Mr. Martuccio will probably be able to clarify, but I think that the skin that was on the field from 11 or 12 years ago just had to be replaced, and I think it was upwards of $1 million. There's sort of a myth. Am I incorrect, Mr. Martuccio? Okay. Good. Sometimes I'm right. And there some suggestion that they're more cost-effective to operate, but when you get into looking at replacing the entire field and then having to, and the environmental consequences of putting that in a landfill site doesn't, it's, yeah, artificial, and also a history of greater, more serious injuries on artificial turf. That seems to be the research that is coming out, the evidence on that. So I'm glad to see that your report does not have that in there. In terms of environmental practices, I know that grass cutting involves a lot of carbon emissions. Are other municipalities moving to more, are they moving to electric or alternatives to gas lawnmowers? And I don't know if that was actually covered in your report, probably outside your mandate, but I just wonder if you could talk to that issue.
Yeah, no, you're correct in that it's not necessarily part of our mandate, but I can share my experiences in that, a lot of municipalities, not a lot, but many, are, thinking about net zero or kind of how to, improve their resiliency to climate change and kind of the, act global, think global. I think I might have mixed that up. So I think your staff are, and we'll probably, uncover some of this a little bit more in the master planning process. But, it can be things like, again, switching to electric. Some of the recommendations here, too, in terms of kind of improvements to your underlying drainage and irrigation. There can be, replacing old irrigation with more, water-efficient infrastructure, or just a better way to I guess, keep the grass growing is something that will hopefully be undertaken, not only through this, the findings of this plan, but again, through your ongoing asset management, life cycle replacement practices.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will say, when you were talking about artificial turf fields, I kept waiting to hear the question mark at the end of one of those sentences that I never popped up. And I thought, should I say? Oh, he went on to a question about lawnmowers. Damn. All right, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at the, nice to see you again, Anna, by the way. I was at the Rec Master Plan meeting when we did discuss cricket a little bit, and we definitely don't have land here right now for a full-fledged cricket pitch, I guess it would be. Would you elaborate, though, for council and those at home, if they wanted to play a game of cricket? There are places in the Niagara region where there are pitches. Where would they be?
Yeah, if memory serves correct. I mean, Niagara Falls has a cricket pitch. Now, that's a municipally operated one. I think there's a private cricket facility in Thorold, for example. Again, we do see some of that informal play happening on, some of your, maybe lower quality kind of fields. Like you're protecting your type A ones with permitting. So, cricket can take place in that. But by and large, through Niagara region, it is kind of relegated, from my understanding, just outside of your city.
Okay, thank you. And recently, in the last few years, I've chased my grandson around the province and in the States to baseball tournaments and seen some pretty nice facilities. Unfortunately, St. Catharines doesn't have anything that really compares to some of them. By moving Alex McKenzie to Trapper Leo, do you see that as becoming a possible destination for baseball tournaments? Is that possible? Is that one of the goals, do you think that should be?
Yeah, and I mentioned it would be moving Alex McKenzie to Pick Leeson, John Dempsey. So Trapper Leo has existing fields. We're proposing upgrading those from type B to type A to increase their kind of playable capacity. So that will, benefit kind of the tournament side. But, in looking at the Pick Leeson and John Dempsey Park, if you're familiar with the site, there is kind of the two diamonds on the top of the hill. Sorry, one diamond on the top of the hill,
right.
Two diamonds on the bottom, but there's a fairly steep slope. There isn't really a good way for pedestrians or cars to go between the two. So it would be more of a master plan to look at opportunities to maybe even also, can we assemble some adjacent land as well to make it more fulsome, to ensure that there is a good layout that is supportive of those tournaments, just like we have McCaffrey in the west, I believe, the southwest. John Dempsey and Pick Leeson could provide that second tournament destination, more focused to adults on the east side.
And lastly, will this report somewhat be incorporated in the recreation master plan that will be coming forth?
If council likes what we're recommending, absolutely. We're, this is the point of these types of studies. Again, it affords us to engage, certain facets of your recreational community very specifically, whereas the master plan, where we're talking to the same folks, but we're also, talking to people that play basketball at the same time. Right. And so absolutely, this is a recent study. A lot of this report is based on 2023 season data, because when we're, just with the timing of our process, the master plan will allow us to even now trend 2024 usage and consider that in relation to the findings presented herein.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the presenter. Hey, just a few questions. So I think you answered most of my questions about Alexander Mackenzie Park. But like when you say moving it, that diamond's going to stay there. It's just not going to be maintained at the current service levels it is now. Is that correct?
I think that is to be determined.
Okay.
Again, the intent is no net change to the number of diamonds in St. Catharines.
All right.
Right? We do not believe you need a net addition of diamonds. What we are saying is we are proposing increased capacity within your diamond system through lighting and other upgrades, and we are proposing additional multi-diamond venues in doing so. So again, I think the future of that space is something that needs to be thought about. Okay. As what types of park and recreational use will take place there.
Yeah, so just for neighbors who live around it, they're not going to see that park disappear overnight. We're going to have more discussions about what the future of that park looks like, correct?
That is not the intent of our recommendation. Yeah. I don't, as a Parks and Recreation planner.
Just when we say we're moving it from one spot to another, some people might get something in their head, right?
Our recommendation and thought at this moment is that I would love to still see it as parkland.
My other question has to do, I liked in the presentation you talked a little bit about soccer fields and the move towards smaller pitches. Just allows for more touches, work on positioning. And so I'm just wondering, can you talk a little bit about how the idea of storing equipment on site would work? Like, would the clubs operate that? Would the city operate it? And are there other options to have larger pitches that are permanently set up for smaller matches? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, really, what we heard from groups, so you have your full-size pitches, and under Ontario soccer regulations, if one was playing, organizing 3 versus 3 games or 5 versus 5, you could fit multiple smaller fields within that large field, but you're lining them as such, right? And so our prevailing thought is that, we identify a few locations of those kind of type C or type B full-size rectangular fields, and really designate them for the smaller age divisions for that play. So lining can be consistent, every week, those locations can be consistent. One thing that we heard from kind of the coaches and the representatives of minor soccer were that, it can be a bit cumbersome to transport all those nets, around, the portable nets. So if we can provide the storage facilities on site, again, whether it's a temporary or a permanent structure, for a period of time, what we're trying to do is impart flexibility without having to, again, invest in permanent installations or acquire new lands. And so, having those amenities on site for groups to store, I don't think it's, anything that requires a lot of staffing per se. Like, it could be a C-can, with a, a lock, for example, and somebody has a lock on there. I think it could be as simple as that. There could be other solutions as well, though.
No, that makes sense. The 2 cricket pitches, or the 2 cricket facilities, it won't be a full field, obviously, on either side of the QEW, but areas where they could play cricket, do you have any locations in mind? Like, I ask in part because I'm curious, but also because I know there's a lot of residents in my ward that are already playing cricket in St. Patrick's Park, for example. And so I'm just curious if you've, would you need a baseball diamond? What are you looking for in terms of siting that?
Yeah, maybe there could be some co-location opportunities in a park with an existing sports field. I think what it does, though, is by, pursuing this initiative of a batting cage and identifying two. And to answer your question, we have not identified a park yet. We think that's best determined in consultation, with your community, your staff do the analysis. Because again, we've heard anecdotally of some use. We may find that as the should council and the city kind of pursue these batting cages, the community can help you identify those locations. But what we're suggesting, I guess, first and foremost is, distribution. We want one on the north side of the QE and one side of the south of the highway. So I think, to be determined.
The batting cage, though, I don't know enough about cricket. Is it the same as a softball cage or is it different than that cage?
A little bit similar. We know some communities like Brampton have installed them in their parks, again, when they can't find 2 to 3 hectares of land for the dedicated grounds, in a neighborhood park even, because, people can walk to it. It is akin to like a baseball batting cage that we envision, maybe, slightly different specs. But we did hear in I think someone in the Recreation Master Plan Advisory Committee said, maybe there's an opportunity to kind of blend them, make them multi-use, so that it could be cricket and, a baseball, for example. So, it's a fairly new level of kind of amenity, but one that I think could help you test.
That's great. Last question. We've done a lot with our courts in terms of making them multi-sport. And you mentioned this in your report a little bit about creating multi-use fields. So you showed some examples of fields in the States where there's a baseball diamond and a soccer field. Are there any suggestions in the report? Did you consider any areas in the city where you could have some multi-use pitches or ball diamonds?
We did not. I mean, these are part of the longer-term outlook, I think. Again, you're going to be forced to be creative as you grow and continue to intensify. Again, to the earlier question from Councillor Williamson around artificial turf, I mean, while we don't see the need in the next 10 years, in the next 30, you might have to, because you just might not be able to, you may have the demand, but your grass fields might not be able to regenerate in time, for example. That might drive the need for additional turf. So I think, that is more of a future kind of consideration, those templates. That being said, I had some time earlier today before I came to council. I was up in Port Weller, and I saw what you folks have done with the courts up there. Now the posts were out of the tennis courts, but I was really encouraged. I can think back to 2007 when I first went to Port Weller, and remember the condition of the courts back then. Today, I saw a really nice court lined for tennis, lined for basketball, and in that fence was a ball hockey net right on either side. That kind of thinking that the city has done is to be commended in terms of finding really, creative ways to address different needs in the same amount of space.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Ratzlaff. I am just very quickly going to look to Mr. Christie, because you did mention one thing there, and I'm going to push back a little bit. I don't think there's anywhere in the city of St. Catharines that could accommodate a full-size cricket pitch without tearing out infrastructure or a forest.
Not quite, Mr. Mayor. It requires a considerable amount of land.
Yeah, I've played it before. It's not, and that's why I believe the only cricket pitch I'm aware of in Niagara is near the Thorold, well, there's one near the Thorold Niagara Falls boundary. Where's the second one?
Right behind John Allen Park on Kaler Road in Niagara Falls.
Okay, but I mean, they are massive facilities. So I will say, for the city of St. Catharines, it is highly unlikely we will ever achieve a cricket pitch. I just don't think that's possible anywhere in the city, short of us pulling out multiple soccer fields, because you can't leave the infrastructure there for those sports when you're trying to play cricket. As a guy who took many balls off the head as a silly mid-on, you need a lot of space. Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have is, you mentioned all the sports, the traditional sports, and then cricket, but I did not hear any mention of pickleball.
They were playing pickleball at Port Weller this afternoon inside. No, the focus of our study in this particular study is sports fields. So sports courts, so like basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, those were not part of our scope. Certainly though, I'm sure it's very rare I go to a community these days and don't hear about pickleball, for example. So I suspect as the master plan gets going, we will receive some feedback there, and certainly consider that if and when it does come up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no other questions, can I have a mover and a seconder for the presentation? Counselor Harris, Counselor Stevens, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Desai. So we're now going to debate the motion. If we could have that put up on the screen. Just that council approve the sports field strategy attached as Appendix 1. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Counselor Phillips, Counselor Ratzlaff. Any debate on the motion? All right, seeing none, I am going to ask for an amendment to the motion. And I would just ask that staff bring back maps indicating where the private fields and where the school board fields are laid over top of the city fields. If we could ask for that to come back. And I'll provide a little bit of a comment because this is something that I sort of keyed on back in 2015 when we came up with the rec facilities master plan in the first place. I think that there is an opportunity that is being lost with the school boards and the facilities that school boards own. Those facilities were built with taxpayer money, just like our facilities were built with taxpayer money. But as we know, in some cases it can be difficult. You know, many of the artificial turf fields are closed off to the general public, are not available to be used, and they're on a rental basis. But by and large, they have, I would argue, even lower utilization outside of school hours than our fields do. So I would really love, I know that its recommendation, I think it's number 2 in the strategy, says that we're going to engage in conversations with the school boards. Well, it may be number 2. I would ask that that be the first recommendation that's acted upon. I know there's a willingness, having talked to the directors of both school boards, there's a willingness to have that conversation. I think it extends beyond fields. I think it extends to gymnasiums, which is what I originally keyed on because our first rec facilities master plan told us we needed a couple of additional gymnasiums, and I look around the city and I see 100 gymnasiums that are empty on a regular basis, many nights of the week. So I think we have to, you know, the saying is that there's only one taxpayer. That's true, and rec facilities have been built by that one taxpayer in a variety of different ways, and I don't think we coordinate as well as we should with respect to that. The other thing I want to draw attention to, because we get into this conversation a lot when it comes to hockey ice pads, is usage numbers and usage percentages. And I will say the percentages in this report are eye-opening. When we take a look at the percentages, you know, we're looking 20, 30, 40% usage during primetime hours. And we look at our ice stock and we see primetime usages in the 90s. Now, that's not a criticism. I think the report very clearly identifies, and I know folks in the local baseball community at least would agree very vehemently that it's not a matter of quantity, it's a matter of quality, and I'm glad to see that that's being prioritized here. I think that's important that we raise the level of our fields, raise the level of the infrastructure at our fields so that our minor baseball groups and our minor soccer groups and our minor football groups are able to have the same level of quality that we see in other municipalities. So I applaud staff for this report for that reason, because I think this report is actually keyed in on the real problem. And the real problem is one of quality. And that's not meant to be demeaning. I think the minor sports world has changed over the years. I think we have taken an important step with this report and the capital strategy that comes along with it. I think it's incumbent on this council then to take care of our core responsibility, and recreation is one of our core responsibilities, to ensure that those changes are made. And now that I talked for a couple minutes, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick point. As far as prime time hours, it kind of jumped out at me when I saw prime time hours starting at 7 o'clock at a baseball field. Our numbers, to me, can be skewered in that way, because you're not going to get a baseball game that starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. To me, prime time for baseball, again, have been around it a little bit. Usually games are not, and these tournaments are not getting started until 9 o'clock in the morning, especially if you have teams traveling. So to me, if we bump that prime time up from 7 in the morning on the weekends until 9, I think our usage, our percentages are going to look a lot better. So I would suggest we do that.
It might even creep up into the high 40s or low 50%.
Who knows?
I don't disagree with you, Councillor, and I mean, we can always have that conversation. It was a similar conversation with hockey, you know, making sure that, because at one point we had our hockey primetime hours starting at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. which is a pretty unreasonable time for a lot of kids who are in school to be able to get to a hockey practice or game. So I agree with you, and that's a conversation I think we should have, and I see Mr. Lamoth and Mr. Christie nodding their heads, so I think they're in agreement with you as well.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the point you're making, especially with the school boards, is really valid, because I remember when I was growing up, the city ran programs, and we went to the school at night. I went to a basketball school that was run through the city at Lockview School, public school. Even my own, when my kids were young, we did soccer practice and baseball practices in schoolyards. So like you said, one taxpayer paying for all these facilities and not being used, we definitely have to make sure that they're utilized better than they are.
All right, seeing no others, and I will just say that the impetus for that amendment that I made is simply so that we can see the number, because those maps can be a bit concerning when you see large swaths of the community that seem to have zero coverage. I think those maps might help give us a slightly better impression. Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just declare a pecuniary interest in terms of the part of this report that applies to DSBN
Okay, so you'll
fields.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It would be the second clause, so Councillor Williamson will only be voting on the first clause when it comes to that point.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or concerns, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
Item 9.2, Planning and Building Services, request for expansion of water servicing into agricultural lands. Prior to the discussion on this report, council will hear a delegation from Paul Speck, the president of Henry of Pelham Estate Winery. I will now call on Mr. Speck to make his presentation. Mr. Speck, the lectern is yours.
There we go. Well, I feel like I'm at the NATO summit here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and city staff for giving me a few minutes to just explain what we're trying to accomplish here. I don't have a presentation because I know that there's a pretty simple request and a report from the staff on this. As you probably know or may know, Henry of Pelham is owned by myself and my two brothers. We started this, we planted the first vineyards in 1984, started the winery in 1988. All of the grapes that we produce, that we process at the winery are all locally grown from Niagara. What we're essentially looking for is changing the water delivery system. Currently, the water delivery system is we buy water from the Wileys, we actually buy all their grapes as well, but they're part of our supply chain. We buy the water from them inside the agricultural zone. They have a water, the ability to get city water. We put that in a 30-ton truck. That's about 40 feet long, and we drive it 3 to 5 times a day and dump it into a cistern, and then we take that water and we pressurize it and use it. And forever we have not been able to, we've been using this system, and what we're looking to do is just change that delivery system. There is a fire hydrant. It's about a mile or kilometer bit away from us. 95% of where that water line would go would be under Henry of Pelham owned land, our land, and it would go through one of our neighbors, Sandra Wiley, who we buy all their grapes from as well. She's obviously okay with it, and we would pay for the system, and in essence, it's just changing the delivery system. It's not really changing the outcomes at all. And I really think that it's hopefully a simple conclusion. I know the report talks a lot about preserving agricultural land in West St. Catharines, so I would like to address that a little bit. You know, we're the largest landholder in West St. Catharines. We have 300 acres of vineyards. There's another couple hundred acres of vineyards out there, of which we buy pretty much all the grapes. And the winery is a facility that is in the agricultural area. We built that before the NEC, the Niagara Escarpment Commission, even had policy around wineries. The Green Belt was in 1991-ish or 2005, somewhere in there. No, it was 2000. Whenever the Green Belt came in, we were, of course, before that. So all these policies around preserving agricultural land sort of are always kind of behind where what it takes to preserve agricultural land. And preserving agricultural land is what the business is. And why do wineries end up in agricultural zones? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is a winery is basically a dressed-up factory. It requires all the same facilities that a factory would require. We dress it up because there's a tourism component to it. But at the end of the day, the only way to process fruit is to take it through a process that we do at the winery. The reason they're in agricultural zones all over the world is, by and large, it's better to be close to where your fruit's grown, where all of your technology, staff, everything is, so that we can effectively process all the grapes that we bring in. There's a spin-off benefit to it, which is that there's an a tourism component to it, and that's why generally wineries are grown or put up in agricultural zones. The spin-off benefit of the tourism is enormous. I mean, the top two tourism draws to St. Catharines are Henry of Pelham and 13th Street, and then maybe the Welland Canal viewing facility, and then there's pretty much not much left. So that's why, you know, it's a good idea to have wineries in tourism, in agricultural areas, because when we draw customers to the winery, they spend money in our community, they get to know our community, and it brings off all the spin-off value that it brings to the community. Now, over the years, we've grown quite a bit, so I don't generally like to toot our horn, but I will in this case that, you know, we've taken a winery that, you know, the first year we started, I think we produced about 50 tons of grapes. We produce currently between 3,000 and 5,000 tons of local grapes. During the harvest season, we operate between sort of mid-August to about the end of October. The winery runs 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So we require water, thousands, in fact, millions of liters of water to produce wine. And so we have trucks going on the road three to 6 times a day, are being driven to drop water into the facility. Often we run out of water because if it's 3 a.m. in the morning, it's a Sunday, and we don't have there's often, if the truck's not available, or even the driver most of the time is not available because they're not super excited about driving out and dropping water off. There's times I've come into my office and I haven't had water. And I kind of feel like in the 21st century, we should probably change that, because it's, you know, it's not something that helps out our ability to grow, to continue to grow the business. And when we lose water, the business shuts down, because that's what we require to clean tanks, to do what we need to do. We have a full sewage system that is internal. It's all We built that years ago, so we're not looking to tap into the city sewage in any way, shape, or form. I understand why that's maybe of a concern, but it's not something that we're at all looking for. We're simply looking to change the delivery mechanism from a truck that kind of drives along and dumps water into a straight pipe, as straight as we can get it, non-pressure, not very pressurized pipe. We're going to pay for it. We're going to buy the same city water that we currently buy. We're just going to change the delivery system so that it runs through our land and drops the water into our cistern, and then we go from there and continue on. So, and of course, we'll pay for the water and pay for the maintenance of it. That's basically the gist of it. There's 3 wins here that I see as the most important ones. One is there's an environmental win. We're a sustainably grown and sustainable winery, and so we're audited. There's a win because we're taking 3 to 6 trucks off the road a day. And these are large trucks pumping diesel. There's no reason to have them on the road. The other win is it's from a safety concern. These are large trucks. There's people on bicycles. There's people on the wine route. Anything we can, there's local citizens living out there. Anything we can do to take trucks off the road, I feel like is a good thing. And 3, it allows us to be more efficient and have a reliable water source so that we can continue to grow the business. You know, preserving agricultural land, that's what our job is. So it's I know the regs are, as stated here, I find them somewhat bizarre because that's what we do. That's all we do is preserve agricultural land. Just since I'm here, and I'm going to shut up soon.
Mr. Speck, I will just say you've got about 30 seconds left.
Got it. In 30 seconds, you'll notice that all of the land from the hospital out to Henry of Pelham Vineyards is fallow. It's not in use. There's absolutely really nothing growing on that. That's because we decided to put a $1 billion hospital in the ag zone surrounded by agricultural land. And because of that, the land is owned by speculators, developers, and dreamers. And they're waiting for you guys to change that or somebody to change all that. That's not how you preserve agricultural land. Nobody's going to put the $100,000 an acre it takes to grow vineyards when you're sitting next to a $1 billion hospital with all the pressure that's being developed on it. That's why when you go there to the vineyards, you'll see we're the only people that are actually, and our neighbors who we buy the grapes from. So I do want you to think about that because that's how you actually preserve agricultural land. Sorry, I burned up another 30 seconds.
Mr. Speck, you're the only man I know who can put 30 seconds worth of speech into 60 seconds. All right, with that, I will look to, we've got a couple of questions, so Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter. So what you're looking for is us to give you permission to install a private water line to your site to avoid transporting all the water via trucks, and you're going to continue to preserve the land. That's more or less a summary of everything you just said.
That's well said. It could have been done in 5 seconds.
Perfect. So once everybody's spoken, Mr. Mayor, I'll have an alternative motion to be put forward by Councillor Kusher and I.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Speck, if we go along with what you want, how much do you figure your output as far as wines will increase?
Well, I mean, our output on wines is based on sales, but what I can commit to is that we are absolutely 100% committed to growing wines made from grapes here in Niagara. And our goal is to grow the business. There's tremendous opportunities as the market is opening up. And our plan is to continue to grow the business. The sewage system we have, we've scaled to be 4 times the usage that we're giving it now. So there's lots of room for growth. And there's lots of room for growth in West St. Catharines, because all that land that I was speaking about that's fallow should be growing grapes. And we hope to talk people into it, or we'll plant them if they'll sell it to us at a reasonable price.
Just out of interest, from the time you started until now, how many cases did you produce in the first time? In the first couple of years, and what are you producing now?
We started, I think the first production was about 1,500 cases. We're over 225,000 right now. Sold right across Canada and in over 20 countries in the world. If you want a great deal, the HST is off wine, and we're in Costco.
Thank you. And I think your point about safety of the trucks being removed and the environmental aspect of the trucks being away is very valid also. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, thanks for your presentation tonight. Big fan of your Back on a Wire. It's a great wine. My question to you is on site. I don't recall, but do you guys have a restaurant and do food?
Yes, we do.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I do work in the hospitality industry. If you don't have running water, you have to shut down your restaurant because of if a health inspector comes in and you're not having running water, you just can't operate your food service.
Correct. You're correct, Councillor. In essence, when you run out of water and you're dealing with perishable product in any rate, whether it's grapes or food, you have a significant issue. Not to mention people are upset when the toilets don't work.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. My other question is just any risk that you would be worried about if, I know it's quite, it's going to be an extensive process and setting this up. Is there any risk that you would be concerned about on the winery with this expansion that maybe we haven't thought of? Like just anything that we may?
No, we've talked to a couple of people that they're professionals at to do this type of work, and we're quite confident it's a very simple process, simple to manage it, simple to keep it up and running, and we're quite confident it's not really a big deal in any way, even now or in the future.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williamson.
Good evening, Paul. How are you?
Good.
I think one of the concerns that our planning department likely has is the concern that other landowners, abutting landowners, will want to tap into that water line. I wonder if you could speak to how we could ensure that would not happen.
Well, I think I don't think, it's a private line, so we'd have to agree to that, but that's not our intention, and if you want us to put something in writing that says that we won't let somebody tap into it, we'd be happy to do that, because the intention is to simply run it to the winery. We're not interested in, we have other buildings and properties in that area. Our intention is not to tap into it, it's to simply run it to the winery. But we're happy to do whatever, write some letter or whatever would make you comfortable to make sure that we don't do anything, and we won't allow anybody to tap into it, including some of our other existing buildings. We're not, it's really the winery that uses all the water. The other buildings are quite small.
Thank you. And it's crossing other private landowners'
It crosses, it's Sandra, Wiley, and one other I think where the hydrant is, there's somebody that we already know. And then Sandra's for a second, and then like 95% of it's going across our land, right? And then we have, go under, Fifth Street and into the winery. It's pretty straightforward. Most of it's on our land.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. A question, I don't know if you could answer, maybe staff. If you do this, are you going to be paying, is the city, the region going to be billing you, are you going to be paying for a sewer charge like you would a resident, or do you get a different rate because it's coming from where the Wileys are?
No, we'll pay the same, we're buying the water anyways from the city. We're just changing the delivery mechanism. In terms of the sewage, we have a self-contained sewage system that doesn't actually leave our property. And so we're not looking for city sewage. We actually never will be, and we're not looking for any breaks on, I mean, well, we don't really use city
No, I'm
sewage.
just wondering, would the city be charging you now for sewage rate just like they do residential? Is there a different thing for commercial?
Ms. Douglas
industry?
is indicating no.
No, it would really just, I would believe, I shouldn't speak for the city, but I love to talk about lowering taxes if that were, but we're not going there, but we're just going to buy the water.
Ms.
We're going
Douglas
to buy
is-
the water just through a
Yes,
pipe, not a truck. That's-
Ms. Douglas is indicating no, they'd be paying for the water.
Okay, no, I just didn't know if they were gonna get an extra charge because. the
No,
way it's
and
done.
Ms. Douglas has clarified,
Okay,
no.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, Mr. Speck, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, guys. Merry Christmas, and have a good holiday. Thank you.
Excellent. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councillor Harris, Councillor Kushner. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Now, from a procedural standpoint, there is a staff recommendation. Is there a mover and seconder for the staff recommendation to deny? All right. Seeing none at this time, then Councillor Harris, you had a motion that you wanted to put forward, seconded by Councillor Kushner. So I believe that's been forwarded to the clerk. So this is the alternative motion. I will give everybody an opportunity to read that through. And then, Councillor Harris, did you want to speak first or did you want to speak last? Okay. So, Councillor Kushner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Speck has made a very convincing presentation that, to the effect that the agricultural lands will be preserved by doing this. It'll make him a more viable entity, even though he's viable now. And we're not putting sewers in, we're just putting water in. And I think that's a very important distinction. And as a council, we have the responsibility to make sure that all businesses in this community are able to survive. And we know that tourism is very important to the city, and we know that the wine industry has grown, and it's a very clean industry, and therefore, in my opinion, we should do everything we can to help farmers, growers, and producers of wine as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In reading this, construction won't start until directors of planning and building services and engineering facilities and environmental services satisfied that all the required conditions have been met. Any idea from staff how long it's going to take once Mr. Speck's engineered plan has been put to the city? How long is it going to take us to certify that it's a go? I don't know if I'll direct that to Mr. Martuccio, I guess.
Mr. Martuccio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, there are some approvals that Henry of Pelham will require from the region as well. So can't provide that, but as long as the engineer drawings are provided and the requirements that we set forth are met, I don't see anything holding it back. It's only those approvals that are required, as well as agreements with the private property owners in order for him to be able to obtain certain permits to do the work.
Thank you. I certainly don't want this to be delayed. It should be go forth as fast as possible. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, just two questions to staff. The first one, 13th Street Winery, did they have city water?
They don't have city water, no.
They don't. They do? Sorry.
Do they have 13? No, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I've had conversations where they've had different conversations about water and drawing from the creek, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do not believe they have water, but I can look that up to be more certain.
I mean, I guess obviously the trajectory of the question is, are there other wineries that are going to be asking us for private lines?
So in this case, it's not a matter of them asking us for a private line. It's
Yeah,
asking
sorry.
if they can install the.
Tap into ours to build
It's
private line.
entirely, I will say, it's entirely possible we will receive other requests for that. It has happened in the past.
Yeah. The other question, just about the alternative motion, does it, provided in the staff report, there is a section here at the end. What's it titled? Yeah, alternative outcome. And then you list some bullet points here about steps that you would take if we chose to move forward with this. So I just want to make sure that the motion that we have here in front of us meets or aligns with the alternative outcome outlined in the report. Just, so that's a question to the writers of this report. Yeah, so Director of Planning, I guess.
Mr. Martuccio?
Or, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, some of the requirements outlined in the alternative motion will be some of the requirements that the property owner will need to satisfy in order to obtain permission from the city.
So yeah, I'm just wondering though, if this motion aligns with what you've suggested that we do if we don't move forward with the staff recommendation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it is a more general motion than what was included as an alternative, so it does align with that alternative motion.
Right. Thanks.
Okay. Councilor Williamson?
Thank you. I'm not sure staff will know the answer. Anyone on staff will know the answer to this. Maybe Mr. Speck does. The wineries are along Highway 55, Niagara Stone Road and Niagara Lake. Are they connected to municipal water supplies, or they have do they do their own? I don't know if.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, the councillor, could you please repeat the question?
The wineries in Niagara and the Lake that are located along Highway 55 and east-west line, there's some larger ones. Do they have municipal water supply? Do we know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the councillor, I do not have that information.
Okay, I don't know. Can I ask Mr. Speck to weigh in on that?
Mr. Speck, do you have any idea as to whether the Highway 55 and East-West Line wineries are connected to municipal water or not?
I don't know that everyone is, but I know that most, if not all, are. My understanding.
Thank you. I fully understand staff's concern about the potential for this to lead to non-ag suburban sprawl into agricultural areas and greenbelt areas. If there's a way for us to make a provision that this is just used for winery, and I don't want to even ask that as a question, Mr. Mayor, but I think it might be helpful. Mr. Speck raises a good point about the hospital being built and that tongue that sticks out to the west side of the city, the extension of the urban area that was done back in whenever it was, 1970 or something like that. Councillor Kushner would know. Anyway, if the movers are amenable to a provision that the water be used just for the winery, I would like to add that amendment if it's agreeable.
Can we open Councillor Harris's mic? Councillor, turn it off.
I guess we could put a caveat in there that perhaps the use of the private water line is specific to farming and agricultural uses or winery uses. Like, I'd make it a little bit broad, wouldn't you?
Okay, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that would be part of one of the conditions of the broad conditions. And that's okay with you, Councillor Kushner? Perfect, thanks. That's all I had to say.
Agricultural and winery uses. Okay. Private water service as opposed to line. Service. Councillor Stevens.
Mr. Mayor, my question to staff, or not sure who, what size of pipe would this be? Would this be just big enough that that's to bring in just the water they need, or it would be large enough that it would do a subdivision or something down the road, or like what kind of size are you talking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, whoever the property owner engages to design the water line would engage it for the needs of the winery. So I would assume they would only put in a water line sufficient to service the winery.
Yeah, so going along with what the other councillors are concerned about would be if the water line was just enough for their use, then it couldn't really be used anywhere else. It's coming from there for their usage on that diameter size. So sounds like it's not a bad thing.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers before Councillor Harris? Councillor Harris says he's good. All right, with that, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Item 9.3, Community Recreation and Culture Services Director Proposal from Dead Red Sports and Entertainment Group Limited. Before the discussion of the report, council will hear a delegation from Mal Romanen, the principal of Dead Red Sports and Entertainment Limited, regarding the proposal from Dead Red Sports and Entertainment Group Limited. I will now call on Mal Romanen to present.
What we're planning on doing is bringing a summer collegiate baseball team to St. Catharines and using George Taylor Field that has the facilities that are obviously very suitable for what we're looking to do. The summer collegiate baseball team, it's an elite program. I can get into that in a bit later, but it's for elite players. I kind of compare it to what the OHL would be as far as an aspiring league for players to play in the summer when their college season's over and they're looking to improve their draft status and obviously just their skill level, et cetera. And these leagues are out there to do just that. And obviously that's what we're looking to do here. This is the quick proposal. This is who we are, Dead Red Sports and Entertainment Group. I was born and raised in the Niagara region, so I'm very excited to have the possibility of bringing this to the area. It's certainly missing piece of the Canadian baseball landscape, and I think it'll be a very, very well received. In fact, I know it'll be very well received within the baseball industry. This is a bit of my background. I was with the Blue Jays for over a decade. Before that, an extensive history in all levels of baseball and college baseball as well. I had a son that played, and I know most of everything at all different levels of baseball. So the reason we're doing this is I'm very excited to continue that. And this is the one area, as I said, that we know was missing in the landscape of Canadian baseball. For those that don't know, this is the competition level. So you see you have your grassroots baseball here. We all know travel ball. I heard one of the councils refer to, obviously, a lot of tournaments they've attended. You go on, and the kids go through the states, and whatever level of baseball, there's a lot out there to be played. And then they can, if they're fortunate enough and they're good enough, they'll move on to NCAA opportunities, and there's different, there's different levels of that. There's JUCOs out there, things like that. But obviously, if the players are good enough, they'll receive scholarships in the U.S. to further their baseball career, and they all have to go down to the U.S. to do that at this stage. Above that, these are kind of what we're proposing is to bring a team in that's a collegiate all-star league. So these kids come back from school and they need to play in these all-star leagues. And what these leagues do is they prepare the kids to play professional baseball. Our league is a sprint. We're June, July, maybe a week into August, depending on how the calendar falls. But it's a sprint. So you're playing basically professional baseball. This teaches you, as you know, As their kids, they play a couple days a week or in tournaments, and even in college, they're playing on weekends. They don't play through the week. They have school. So this is full-on training to play professional baseball. And then once they, if they're fortunate enough, they move on to the minor leagues, independent baseball, and then obviously we hope many move on to Major League Baseball. That would come through St. Catharines, and that's what we do. That's what we're trying to give them the opportunity to find their level and obviously realize their dreams, and obviously give them an opportunity to further the skill level and do it so in St. Catharines. And here's another description of what it is. These are all called play. It's a wood bat league. So if you don't know, they play with aluminum or hybrid in college, and this is their first opportunity to feel what professional baseball is like. So they're using the same bats as the pros are using, and again, June and July, approximately 22 home games. The league we're going to be in is the Perfect Game Collegiate League. I know you've probably heard that term, Perfect Game, as well. It's well known in the industry. There's 2 leagues in New York State. This is the better one of the 2, and obviously the reason why we chose it. So we will be the only Canadian franchise. It's the first one and the only one at this stage. You can see here, here's a little description of what it is. There's several leagues. If anybody familiar with baseball at all, the Cape Cod League is the premier league in baseball. So if you're, say, a first rounder, all like the very, very top of the level, the Derek Jeters type thing, you'd be playing in the Cape Cod League. But even the top players, you don't get to the Cape Cod League in your usually freshman year or even sophomore year. So that's your finishing thing. And then there's the other leagues, which we will be in that mix. There's one league in Canada, Western Canadian League. They do exceptionally well. 300,000 they put through in 2003. 2004, it was 400,000 people that came to watch those games. So, the Northwoods League is where the only other Canadian team exists in Thunder Bay. So there'll be a team in Thunder Bay in that league, and then we'll have the one in the Perfect Game League. So it'll be obviously well received, I think, in the industry, as I said, and it's going to make news. I think it'll be a pretty high-profile venture for us, and I think it'll put the city in a positive light in the baseball industry. That's for sure. Benefits for St. Catharines, I can let you guys all read that. Obviously, we would. Anything we do to promote the city, our team, baseball in general is going to help. We will obviously do some sort of summer event annually that will involve the entire community, beyond baseball as well, but it'll be a celebration of baseball. You'll see increased traffic. Again, keep St. Catharines dollars in St. Catharines as well, among other, everybody else that comes in for this. You got all the families that'll come, visiting players, but it's going to be a draw well beyond St. Catharines, there's no doubt in my mind. The civic pride, as you can see, there'll be some jobs, internships that come along with it, just like you would have with the Ice Dogs as well. You can there's all the ancillary things that go with that. Players, coaches, families will be here every day. There's no question. The idea right now, when those kids are playing, when my kid played, he spent 1 year in Missouri and then another year in New England. It was fantastic, but an opportunity to bring them home and then obviously still play at that same level of baseball. You get they'll be here every day watching their kids play, obviously. So it's a real opportunity to celebrate the Canadian part of that. And our business model is to give the Canadian kids the opportunity. We want to stock it with Canadian kids primarily. Obviously, we'll fill in some of the roster. And like I said, if, you get a top U.S. player that wants to come here, certainly we will do that as well, because we're not opposed to doing that if it's a good fit. But the idea is to have a place for these Canadian kids to come home, play their summer ball, because they're gone as you know, they're gone through their schooling all year long. So it's that one area that is missing in the industry. So, and it'll allow us to. It will be a celebration of baseball. So somebody mentioned with the sports strategies too. Enrollment has gone up since, frankly, we were there and the Jays started winning again. It's no secret, he is right. As the Jays go, a lot of people enroll. By us being here, it'll promote the game. And I have no doubt you will see increased enrollment in baseball and a newfound excitement for the game in this area. So that's just a little teaser video we put together, just on, how it might look. Our ask is simple. We don't really need much at this stage. Just some netting, fencing, padding for safety, some safety things that are concerned. I mean, the park, obviously, many of the teams in this league are former New York Penn League teams, which, of course, St. Catharines used to be. So you require stadiums like George Taylor Field. So it's just an easy, natural fit. It works great for the product. The seating is great. I mean, there's about 2,000 seats there. So, I mean, it really fits for this type of environment. So we're not asking for much other than the opportunity just to continue working with Phil and negotiate a lease and move forward with the project. We need about between 18 and 22 dates a year. It's June and July. I think we'll fit seamlessly in with any of the current users in that park. We're here to enhance what the product is. We're here to obviously work with minor baseball. I've talked to them already. They're very big proponents of what we're doing, the opportunities for the kids. We'll bring them into the fold. Anything we have as far as equipment, other users can use, whether it's senior teams. I don't know if Brock still plays here, but we're certainly going to be a community member and work with all the groups. So that's all we're asking, is just to continue to move forward and work on a lease with Phil. So I'll take any questions if there are any.
All right, Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter. So you're coming here tonight to just ask us permission to negotiate with the city and move forward.
Correct.
Perfect. And I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, the next question is, so what other groups are there you're going to accommodate them or work with them so their nights aren't disrupted?
Yeah. And to be honest, I've already looked at, they generally use a Tuesday and a Thursday and some weekends, and that's not going to be a problem at all for us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Thanks for your presentation tonight. Very exciting to hear this. And I did hear you say, so it's very comparable to the New York Penn League as they have in New York. I know the Stompers are now playing in Brooklyn, I believe. We lost our team to them, but it's going to be on the same level as the New York Penn League?
No, well, so the New York Penn League was professional baseball, like single A. This is elite college ball. So you can only play in this league if you're college eligible. So we're going to send them on to professional baseball. So this is elite college players.
Okay, thank you for that. Any idea what an average ticket would be just to see one of the games?
What's that?
The average ticket price for a game?
Yeah, actually, that's the other thing. The whole idea is to be affordable. Like when I was a kid, we used to go to see Blue Jay games because they were affordable. Not anymore. It's too hard to get to and too expensive. So it's a family-friendly event. Like we would probably have 3 levels. The main seats maybe $20, but 10 and 5 general admission. So it's very reasonable for a family to come.
Got it. Thank you. Another question through you to the presenter. St. Catharines or Niagara name? I know we have the Niagara Ice Dogs, but they're based in St. Catharines. And a lot of people, especially around this, are very passionate about having the St. Catharines name. Will it be a St. Catharines name or will it be a Niagara name?
Well, I'd prefer Niagara for branding, just for us selling a business. I mean, obviously, we haven't decided on that at this stage, but just in thinking about how we would brand it, I think and that's just the selfish thing right there, of how do we sell the product. Niagara certainly encompasses a much wider range of attracting people to come in. So, I mean, that's my initial thought. I mean, I certainly could be up for discussion.
Thank you. And my final question to you is, the players being college, I'm assuming they would be living on their own. They wouldn't be living with billet families, similar to how the Ice Dogs live.
Ideally, we'd put them in dorm rooms. I mean, we could use billets as well in certain cases, but I'd prefer to have them in, I discussed, the dorm rooms in the summer are generally available, so I'd work with the schools, Brock or the colleges to makes it easier for the kids to be together in transportation and things like that.
Great, thank you.
Which we would pay for, obviously. Yeah. So.
Thank you. I look forward to the St. Catharines Stompers returning.
Maybe a throwback jersey. I think that's what we all envision as a throwback
the
Stompers
alternate
jersey.
Sure.
There you go.
We can do that.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Roman, is this a franchise that you're relocating or is this a new franchise?
This is an expansion franchise.
Okay. And then you'd be playing mostly night games, I take it, or be
well, during the week for sure. Yeah. But we'd have weekend games. in my mind, we'll do some Sunday doubleheaders, and we'll do a school game here and there, like before school's out, that'll be a day game, things like that. But during the week, sure, we're going to do night games, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure the league has minimum lighting standards. Have you looked at the quality of lighting?
I have, yeah.
And it meets the
Yeah,
expectations?
we'll be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phillips.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Townsend, for the St. Catharines question. I remind you that the Welland Jackfish do draw from all over Niagara, big crowds. And it still irks me that Niagara Ice Dogs are not called the St. Catharines Ice Dogs. But anyways, that's another from their story. Very aware of the Cape Cod League. I've been there numerous times.
Nice.
The community really supports that league, like
it's unbelievable.
Incredible. How are you going to match that?
Well, we're going to work very hard, obviously, and I think one of the advantages we have is by being the only Canadian team, that's exactly what we're trying to build. That special feeling that you come out and you're going to see, you know, as we say in our information, the stars before they rise. So we're going to get into the community. I'm going to move here again, which, you know, just from a personal note of commitment to this area, and then we're going to sell this as a community event. We're going to involve minor baseball with 50-50 draws, things like that, and obviously anything we can do to continue to promote St. Catharines in the community. As a summer destination, you come see baseball, and obviously you get attached to the kids when they're up. You know, you can see them as they move along. So we're going to promote the kids, promote the city, and make it a community event. That's the model we're looking to do. So.
I don't know if you're aware, in the Cape Cod League, they have mornings for kids where their players are coaching the kids. It's a way of making money for their
100%.
kids. And that works out really good. And again, to answer or to comment on Councillor Townsend's questions, they can't be drafted. They cannot be drafted.
They cannot be drafted.
Team. But during the season, they could get drafted.
That is correct.
As soon as that happens, they leave you.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They can come here, and once they get drafted, that's correct.
Aaron Judge also played, I think, in the Cape Cod League.
Right.
Thank you.
But correct. So I've already talked to minor baseball about doing exactly that. Having the kids come in, we'll do, you know, days, coaching days. That's what you expect of the kids when they come here for the summer, to give back to the community.
That's where you get the kids from the community to come and watch you play ball.
Correct.
And if they come, then the parents come too.
Yeah, absolutely. We've all done that too, right? Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lindell.
I'm really excited about this because George Taylor Field is a fantastic field.
It is.
And if you want to move back to the city, Meriton's a great place to buy a house.
That works for me too, probably.
Well, they're building a lovely condo right next to the park. So,
right.
Which leads to my next question is, have you talked to the city about parking?
So I have, and obviously I know what's the former high school there. I've actually had discussions with them about using the parking that's there. So, I mean, I couldn't say for sure at this stage, but I feel comfortable in saying that I've made progress in our ability to utilize that space. And obviously there's still, you know, around the facility, the arena, the community center, or street parking. So, but that is obviously a key thing. So I've already, you know, approached the groups about seeing if that was a possibility, because it certainly helps our ability to operate and everybody's enjoyment. So yes.
Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor, I will just jump in and say we've also had conversations with the developers of that property and the possibility and feasibility of additional parking, which may also be useful for this context as well. I have Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter. I think it's wonderful. Like you said, I'm not going to Toronto to a Blue Jay game. It's too expensive.
Right.
Can't afford it. Jackfish, I'm sorry, I'm not driving to Welland. Sorry, Welland. But,
what if they were called Niagara?
No, I'm not driving. I'm not driving that far. I'm sorry. So to be here right in the neighborhood, even though it's in Meriton, that's fine. That's where the best diamond is right now, I think we have in the city. So, and to be affordable like that for the people to get the ball going again. I had Stomper season tickets back in the day,
nice.
30 years ago.
Right.
And they used to have the season ticket holder barbecues before the game and everything off to the side, and it was a great blast. And my guy, he was like 3 or 4 years old, so we had a great time as a family outing, and so I think it'd be great for something like this.
Thank you.
Excellent. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Mr. Romanen, for the presentation. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the presentation? Councillor Harris, Councillor Lindell, that we receive the presentation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. So we'll move on to the motion. Can I have a mover and a seconder? I'm going to allow Councillor Lindell, because this would be in her ward. I'll say Councillor Townsend will be my seconder on this one. These are the happy ones that people want to support. So you got to spread the love, Councillor Harris. Do we have any questions or comments with respect to the report? All right, seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I think in that video, it looked exactly like Kevin Townsend pitching, the second pitcher, but I say yes.
Councillor Kushner. And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Thank you for the editorial comment, Councillor. Moving on to item 10.1, provincial enabling of commercial property assessed clean energy CPACE financing tools. I have moving this Councillor McPherson. Do I have a seconder for this one? Councillor Dodge. It's not in my script, I won't, but. All right, Councillor McPherson, do you want to speak first or do you want to speak last? Can we open up Councillor McPherson's microphone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to read the whole motion. The point of it is to ask the province to make it possible for commercial property owners to obtain low-cost, long-term financing for energy. I think we've declared an energy crisis. We want to provide as many opportunities as possible for both private and public business owners to to access funds to retrofit their buildings, and this is just simply asking the province to move forward with the legislation. And many others.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend. Okay. Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Report requests. I have a report request that staff prepare a report regarding updates to the R-zone policy. This is something we've had conversations with some of our committees. Are there any other council report requests this evening? Seeing none. All those in favor of the report? Oh, sorry, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make note that in the last motion, I did have a conflict. I realized as it was being brought up, so I'll fill out the paperwork and send it into the clerk's office, okay?
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Townsend, for letting us know about that. Councillor Phillips, did you have a comment?
Just wanted to, I don't know where this is going to fit in. I pulled the Foster Festival item from correspondence. Were we supposed to speak to that, or is that just?
I believe we had already passed it.
Oh, just passed as was? Okay, we didn't need to speak to it. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right, so all those in favor of the report request? Opposed? That's carried. Item 13.1, minutes to receive. There were a number of issues that Councillor Miller had contacted the clerk's office yesterday about with respect to the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee. The reality is that a memo is required to address the things that Councillor Miller brought. So I'm looking for a motion to defer Councillor Harris. So Councillor Harris is making a motion to defer the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee minutes of November 13th to meeting in 2025 to give staff the time to be able to bring back memos on the items that Councillor Miller has identified. So I have a mover for deferral. Can I have a seconder for deferral? Councillor Ratzlaff. All those in favor? Opposed? So that's carried. Then I also need a mover and a seconder to file the minutes of all the other advisory committees of council as save and except for anti-racism. So Councilor McPherson, Councilor Stevens, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now I will look to the clerk to read the reasons for going into closed.
A motion to go into closed session for financial management services, property management, property matter disposal, closed session pursuant to Municipal Act, Section 239-2C, a proposed or pending disposition of land by the municipality or local board, 54 Church Street. Legal and Clerk Services Director, closing premises public nuisance, closed session pursuant to Municipal Act, Section 239-2F, advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. An Office of the Mayor Administration, CAO Performance Evaluation, closed session pursuant to Municipal Act, Section 239-2B, personal matter about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and Section D, labor relations or employee negotiations.
Can I have a mover and a seconder to go into closed? Harris and Lindell, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Away we go. Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place where we laughed about. There we go. Someone knew what I was singing. Welcome back, Cotter. Great show. Motion arising from the closed session, 15.1, Financial Management Services, Property Management, Property Matter, Disposal, 54 Church Street. I have Councillor Harris moving and seconding by Councillor McPherson, and I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Harris. Yes. Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson. No. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner. Yes. Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that is carried.
I appreciate consistency. 15.2, Legal and Clerk Services, Closing Premises, Public Nuisance. Can I have, so I've got Councillor Ratzlaff moving and Councillor McPherson seconding. Look to the clerk.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner. Yes. Councillor Harris. Yes. Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson. Yes. Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
15.3, Office of the Mayor Administration, CAO Performance Evaluation. Moving this is Councillor Phillips, seconding is Councillor Lindell. To the clerk.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner. Councillor Harris. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
That the bylaws listed on the council agenda as A to G be read a first time, considered, and passed, and that they be signed and executed by the mayor and the clerk. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Stevens, Councillor Miller. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then finally, motion to adjourn 2024. Councillor Dodge, Councillor Kushner. All in favor? Opposed? Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year.